Okay, on today's video, we're going to talk about dynamic remarketing. What it's about, what it is, how you're actually going to be able to use it to make money, okay? Actually, the title of this video actually mentions, what is dynamic remarketing, when we're talking about Google Ads, dynamic remarketing good for, and what it's not good for. This same stuff could actually be applied to Facebook dynamic remarketing or, soon in the future, other platforms that do dynamic remarketing. But there's some specific situations where it can make you a pile of money, and there's other situations where something else, i.e. static ads, will actually make more money than the dynamic remarketing can do for you by itself, okay? So, and there's dynamic prospecting ads, which are technically, for people that are not remarketing or people who haven't been to your site yet. This stuff kind of would also apply to that to some degree. So any of those situations, this information that I'm going to give you should be able to help you at the end of the video walk away with some actionable advice that'll actually make you money. So anyway, with all that said, I'll tell you how I do things and how you set up dynamic remarketing that works. And then if you don't use dynamic remarketing and something works better, i.e. the static ads, how I actually execute those so you know how to do this. You got a turnkey method for making money at the end of the video. What is dynamic remarketing and what most people use it for? So most people, when they're in, you probably have researched or found before you found this video itself, they wonder if they should, it's for marketing products, 90% of the time what most people use it for. So, and it's very crude or rudimentary, way that they do it. So that basically it's fundamentally this. You have an e-commerce store, somebody goes to a product page. Later on they go to CNN.com to read the news for that day, or they go to weather.com, and then if there's banner ad blocks there, then they'll have the ad show up for that person who's looking at product ABC. The ad is automatically created to have some predetermined information in there, namely the logo and the product itself they were looking at, and a few other products they were looking at, between 3 and 5 others, generally speaking. Okay, with the idea being, if you're going to do any remarketing for people, targeting people again with banner ads, once you've paid good money to get them to your site, that if you're selling products, the best thing you can do, i.e. what's easy to do and makes most people can wrap their heads around, is having the product show up in the ad again instead of having, versus something else, okay? It doesn't take a lot of skill to put together the ad. If you have Google Merchant Center set up for your shopping campaigns, then the product feed is already set up. So to create a dynamic remarketing ad, you don't have to do much. You create the campaign itself, you point to the same feed you have for the product, the shopping campaigns on Google Merchant Center, you're done. So what is it though good for in general? Beyond this basic use case, you can use it for way more than that. Particularly if you get creative here. But what the dynamic remarketing is good for is people in a space who have lots of SKUs, or basically different types of items for sale. And when I say items, this could be products or services here. I don't want to exclude anybody out of this, okay? Works for anybody. Specifically who have the range of hundreds of different products or hundreds of different unique services that are very distinctly different, in which they're so different that they definitely need their own product or service pages that are unique and different for those things. You can't visualize grouping them together even if you wanted to. And why is this? Well, if you create static banner ads that are set up to retarget people, if you use one ad for everybody who's been to the site, that's better than nothing. But it's a lot better if you can have an ad that's relevant to if they were looking into product A, your follow-up advertising is much more effective if you've got content on the banner ad about product A, because for a lot of people, you have lots of different products, whoever's looking at product A is so much different than product B that it really isn't effective unless they mention something about product A in the ad. At the very least, it'll work better. If not, it's the only way it will work. So with that said, you can't do that if you have too many products, okay? At the end of the video, I basically explain that if you have the possibility of making your ads from scratch, you're going to do that. But logistically, when you have too many products, you can't. You're kind of stuck with, if you want to have the ad relevant to what they were looking for, you got to use the dynamically generated ad in order to do it, even though it's less ideal to do that technically. And the main reason why it's less ideal is because the ad looks very generic and plain. The ads are not, clickable in terms of looking enticing, interesting, therefore they get less click-through rate. And going further than that, there's a term called banner blindness, which obviously when you see a banner ad, your brain is actually designed to say, is this an ad or isn't it not an ad? And if it says it's an ad, you ignore it. So your goal always is to trick the person when they eyes glance or glaze over it, to have that split second that they don't know for sure, to get their attention by what's on the ad. But if the ad, you're doing these dynamically generated ads, Google only has so much I'm sure they could do a better job if somebody there on Google's team made it possible. But for 10 years, basically, the ads fundamentally look boring, and they look and there's only so many different rearrangements, even though there is quite a few ways that they rearrange the ad for you once it's rendered for the user on their web browser when they're on these other sites after they leave your site. People can tell by looking at it, it's an ad that even though it's not identical, it's this ad that they've seen many times before, so it's easier to mentally block it out when they're trying to go through that yes-no initial mental gate, is this an ad or is this not an ad, which then you don't even have a chance to get their attention enough to read the ad, which then anytime that happens, you've wasted your money. A lot of people don't know. If they haven't watched my videos, they would know. But a lot of people don't know, if people don't click on your ad, even though they call it pay-per-click advertising, then you'll pay more for the next click, because Google's not going to let you do a crappy job advertising and charge you what everybody else is charging. The system's set up not only with Google, but with other ad platforms. The higher rate in which people click, the less you're going to pay per click. The less you pay per click, obviously increases your chances of getting a high ROI. That's enough to pay for the cost of the ads and the product or service costs, so on and so forth. So when you're fundamentally stuck with this dynamic remarketing ad to customize your ad because you've got too many products to make actual uniquely designed creative for each product or service you have it on your website that you're trying to market and what you're offering, you've now kind of neutered, if you will, part of your, the chance of which that you will be able to generate a positive ROI from your remarketing. Remarketing is generally a lot easier to make new traffic come in work in terms of an ROI from an ROI standpoint or ROI basis, but still, it's not a gimme, and you want to start out with as much chance or likelihood to succeed as you can. So therefore, you want to spend as much time on the design of the ad. The design of the ad in terms of looking eye appealing, just like a hot girl or guy, you want to look at it. The ads are basically the same concept. The more chance that you're going to have it to make money, and so therefore that's basically the biggest factor of them all. Of course, the content of the ad, what's the offer, is very, very important, as is the design. But if the design looks like crap in terms of looking like a computer generated it, for one, like these dynamic remarketing ads ultimately do, is a killer. But if it just you don't want your brain and your eyes are designed to look at attractive things, and if the ad doesn't look attractive and it is also look unique, which those go kind of hand in hand, you're not going to get the click-through rates. Okay, so you have to focus on that. You also have to focus on the offer. But what's great about the dynamic remarketing ads is you can actually make the offer better. So what you lack in the uniqueness and the eye candy kind of factor in terms of making a banner ad that gets clicked through, you can make up for it in terms of the offer being customized. So if you're going to take advantage of dynamic remarketing ads, what I'm saying to you is, you should consider going further than just, oh, I'm so fancy, I got the product they were looking at in the ad, I'm done now. You can go a step further and make it a little bit more customized. The more customized you make it, the better the results you're going to get. And if you're going to go ahead and have to settle for a crappy looking, boring computer generated ad, these dynamic remarketing ads fundamentally are, let's go ahead and go to town on the customization aspect of the ad, okay? So what I did here is I gave you several examples of how that actually is done, of real world examples where I've either done this or played a part in optimizing somebody's account that did this. So you can understand how to actually use these dynamic remarketing ad templates, if you will, or ad system, or whatever you want to call it, to your advantage to actually take advantage of what it was, it's set up to help you do, even though most people aren't going to tell you that or take advantage of it. So if you have a product, instead of just showing them the product they were looking at, why not put in there, and this can be done without using a product feed. Normally, with a dynamic remarketing ad, you got to have a product feed, like I said, but if you have a shopping campaign already and you have Google Merchant Center, you already have that. So then you just create your dynamic remarketing ad as usual. Like I said, as the low-hanging fruit, most people can manage to do. But when you get to the text part of the, you can create a custom ad template instead of just using the one that shows the product and the logo, which Google gives you by default. And you can say, you can put in there a testimonial. Now the best would be to have a testimonial, so you can have a product feed that you have a testimonial for each product in the product feed. So you can have a custom ad template that you tell Google that you want to have not only the product they looked at, but if you're going to show that XYZ product that we're looking at, well then you want the testimonial next to it. That formula works very, very good. Because if you weren't going to buy it the first time when you were on the site the first time, half of the time, it's just, I'm not sure if I can trust it or not. The best way to show something's trusted is to show the reviews that it's got. Another way to do that would be like showing its Amazon reviews, another version of that. If you have it like 47 reviews on Amazon with a 4.7 rating. If you have that, I would use that instead. But a go-to that I usually have is, I love working with, insert the name of the brand products. And again, you do it on an individual product by product basis, but if you don't have reviews for each product, which most people don't, then a cool little workaround is you could say, I love working with, insert the brand name of your brand name, Thornton exhaust products. What happens is the people see the product that they were looking at, that registers in their brain in terms of the product photo, and then they see the quote about the testimonial, and then you can show 5 stars there. They won't catch on to most of the time that this is a generic review for everything. So you can have the same testimonial in your feed for every one of your products. They think it's a testimonial for just this item. Therefore, you get a super high click-through rate on your ad. So whether you go all the way and have a custom testimonial, or you explain what the reviews are from Amazon for that item by item, and have that actual information go inside your product image and go all the way with it and get the most results, or you have a generic review or a generic review score of what your brand products have gotten cumulatively on Amazon. Both work pretty good. One just a little bit better than the other, but they're not that much different, and it's something anybody can do, okay? That's a good go-to for if you have solo product. How to use dynamic remarketing, that works really, really well. And you will want to do, if you have lots of products, but even if you have a few products, that generally will be as good as or at least almost as good as building a static ad for every, actual product that you have, where you have control over the creative, can make it as eye-appealing as possible. A second option for products, you can say you have the product image there again. Sitewide sale, 20% off everything till July 1st. So if they're not, lacking in trust, they're procrastinating because they're trying to decide if they should spend the money or not. And the banner ad anytime, or any ad in general, any PPC ad, anytime you can build urgency and scarcity, you're going to increase the click-through rates and therefore how much money you're making on the same amount of ad dollars. And so when you say you get XYZ off or XYZ benefit, maybe you'll get $50 off, whatever you can do. If you can't offer a percentage off, a flat amount usually works pretty good as a side thing. And then you say what the deadline is. You're building urgency and scarcity. Urgency, the benefit is, and scarcity. I guess that would be the other way around. Scarcity, kind of the percentage. Well, you could go either way. Urgency and scarcity, kind of elements of both in terms of when you're offering it and how long it's good for. And you want to only have it. A lot of people say, well, why don't I just say 20% off? Whatever. That isn't nearly as good as saying when it's actually good for and when it will be cut off, because that whole, you are not going to get the urgency and scarcity feeling in the user if you do that. To get the people that were on the fence to shake them off the fence, people think, oh, I can just do that later, and then that later just never comes. If you say, here's the ad, here's a good chance to get it, but not only that, if you get it now versus later, so if you were considering it, you should buy it now, and you may forget about it, so why don't you do it now? Versus just saying 20% off, I'll just do that later, like I said. It's a big, big difference there. What you can do with these ads then, though, if you have a feed, is you can update the feed. Instead of saying July 1st, you update the feed. Now it says August 1st, September 1st. So if it works, you can just keep it going. I know that's a little bit sketchy in terms of a never-ending sale, but yeah, hey, this stuff really works. And you're not lying. You decided to have the sale again another month, and then another month. And so, but you can take the feed and update the feed, which you could use a computer script technically to update the feed. And then the ad is not only going to show the user the product they were looking at, but something that says they're going to get 20% off that item, only good for the rest of the month. Technically, it says everything off the store. So they won't even pay attention to the everything. They'll think, oh, 20% off my item that I was looking at. Great. And then they're going to take advantage of it. So that's a way that you can use the dynamic ads, the dynamic remarketing ads, in a way that they're technically Google's giving you to be able to take advantage of it and make money from it, versus the plain Jane dummy way. Oh, I'm just going to, I had the product. I could see the product I was looking at, which everybody's seen that. Nobody's impressed by it anymore. If you take it a step further, you'll get, upwards of 5 times as much results going just this extra little step that I gave you here with your ad, whether you use this or this. The sale works better than the testimonial. Me personally, for extra credit here, I'm doing both. I'm going to have one ad that kills the uncertainty about the trust, and then one that builds the urgency/scarcity. And it'll run in rotation. They'll see the one ad, the next day they'll see the other, the next day they'll see the first one again, and it'll just drill it into their head until they buy. And it's a part of, I consider it a system, a funnel. You use techniques to get people that, your goal is to constantly narrow down your front-end advertising to get somebody who's more and more qualified all the time. And then once they got them to the site, you work on your remarketing to get the bottom of the funnel so efficient so that you can do more front-end advertising later on, and they work together really. And so if you're not doing remarketing, you need to, because frequency is more important than reach in marketing in general. And I always spend about 10% of the budget on remarketing, because every single time that'll make the front-end advertising work better, upwards of twice as good as if you did no remarketing at all. So, but you only need to spend about 10% of your budget on remarketing. Sometimes upwards of 20% I'll spend. You can play around with it, whether it's 10 or 20. but you get the general idea. You should, and I do this on every account without exception. I do remarketing because people see this. You're not going to see people click through and buy right away fully in terms of seeing the full value there. A lot of people will see it. It'll register. They get paid on Friday. They buy. And so you can't look at the conversion numbers of the campaign by itself, by the way. You only get some of your sales to come through that way. A lot more will just, they'll remember what you said. You've slowly brainwashed them with these messages here. Then 2 weeks later, when they decide, actually, yeah, I am going to buy, they go to type in your brand name into Google directly. They buy, but it wouldn't have happened unless you followed them around with these highly effective messages. So anyway, moving forward, if you have a service, now these are technically kind of products at the same time, but a lot of people don't do dynamic remarketing for services. One of the main reasons is because you usually don't have hundreds of different unique services, okay? So these are kind of borderline products/service together. I would definitely do it if I had hundreds of different services, okay? Because generally, if you put the time and effort into do this, at least the way that I'm saying here, it will generally always make money, okay, after your expenses even. So one example here where I did this before was in the hotel space. It's common for people in the travel industry to do these dynamic remarketing ads, but they don't do it very intelligently. They may say, you were interested in this hotel room. Want to book? Like, people get tired of this. Everybody else just wants to beat you over the head with the stupid messaging over and over again, asking people to buy. Nobody likes that. It's an aggressive approach that pisses people off a whole lot about us online marketers in general. Your goal is to add value to the buyer with your advertising at all points in the game. Initially, afterwards, otherwise you just don't do it. It's not that hard to actually get the person when they see the ad to actually like what they've seen and add value to the buying process. They may not buy it, but at least they don't look at your ad and are disgusted. Because that also reflects badly against your company as well, right? And it just doesn't work. For the hotel space, you see the image of the hotel, of course, like with the products, and you say only 2 rooms left from December 1st to the 7th. So usually on a site, you plug in what date frames you have. There is a way so that when you can have a dynamically generated page when somebody fills in a date, that URL can spit out what the inventory is during that date range. And with that, there's a way, if you only have, so your inventory of how many rooms you have left, you can put that into a product feed. Sorry here. First of all, the 2 rooms here your supposed inventory that's left builds your urgency and scarcity element into your ad, which gets it to be a lot more effective. You can put that in your dynamic feed that these dynamic ads are based upon, and basically you can have a script that updates that feed, whether you got 2 rooms left, 1 room left. A lot of people would just say, there's only 2 left, and that's just the way that it stays forever on your feed. You don't actually update it. Now it's kind of skeezy, but this is what people do. And then as far as the date range goes, again, there's a way technically where you can put on there when somebody fills in the details about what they're looking for, that can be saved, and you can bring the person back when they click on the ad back to that page that's actually filtered down to the date range. It's not that complicated to do. So you're basically telling them, you're helping them like, hey, I know you're still doing the trip, we only have 2 rooms left. So you're actually helping the buyer with just a little bit more extra information, okay? So with that, it gives you a good example of how a service can be done. Now it's technically a product/service, but with that said, I have another, the next example here will give you a little bit more idea on also how to do this for a service as well. So for this one's for an insurance company. It was for a travel insurance company. They had a search similar to the hotel space, so it's very similar in that the person, when they're looking for insurance, at least the bigger guys, they have a questionnaire, and you fill out that questionnaire, and out comes the policy that's right for you. Okay, that again can be saved, at least if your website is programmed to do so like that, to where you can save the URL so that the search results that was output for that user can be a static page effectively that somebody can go back to and where it's all saved, okay? Which is what you want if you got to do an effective dynamic remarketing campaign. So what you can do is you can simply say, we saved your insurance plan here, so that they know that if they're going to buy, they're thinking, I got to go through that crap again. But you're actually making it easier now for them and saying, hey, you don't have to go through it again. We saved it for you. Real simple. Not complicated at all. The best marketing techniques, by the way, are not ones that are overly complicated. It's just thinking outside the box. This is also why I'm not afraid of my job ever going away of being a PPC ad manager, because anytime somebody does something and it gets to be widespread, it'll stop working, which is going back to what I said before about dynamic ads and them looking boring and all that. And reason why I usually use static ads instead of dynamic ads. But dynamic ads allow you to do stuff with that static ads you can't do with them, like I talked about here. So that's another instance of how dynamic ads can actually be, dynamic remarketing can be done to take advantage of the dynamic aspects of that of the Google Ads platform for dynamic remarketing ads. Okay, so anyway, with all that said, what is dynamic remarketing ads not so great for? I'm going to get into that next. So when you sell a few products or services, we're talking about 10 or less, that's the time where I would typically normally make static ads, design a static ad instead of using dynamic remarketing. Why? Going back to like what I said before, you can design the ad to be as much eye candy as possible, which gets your click-through rates up as high as possible, which gets your cost per click down, which gets your ROI up. They all are interlinked. Now, you may have more than 10 products or 10 services, but if you can group them together to where it's 10 or less, then it now is possible again to make a static custom designed ad for every quote unquote category you have now. So if you, for instance, we have somebody, that sells auto parts. You can have a ad for and it was a brake or auto performance brakes. Drilled rotors can be there's a lot of products in the drilled rotor category, but we had one set of remarketing ads that we were designed that were static for that whole drilled rotor category. Okay, talking about that particular category. Then there's the slotted rotors, the same thing. Technically, in that particular industry, the product themselves only work for a certain model of car. So technically, dynamic remarketing ads could have been used there as well. But for this particular case, we just made the static ads, and that's what we went with. Not to say the dynamic remarketing ads couldn't work, but we didn't in that case. But I'm just giving you an example. Instead of, you have lots of different SKUs, maybe you group them together. And maybe because you group them together, you make static ads, that's actually going to get you better results than the dynamic remarketing ads. So you have to make a judgment call as to what you're going to use. So, but how much difference of results are you going to be able to get making a customized design ad that has a whole lot of eye appeal compared to using a dynamic remarketing ad. So I just want to speak about that. So, because obviously you're going to have this to make this judgment call for yourself. So if you, from what I know in general, having set up dozens of remarketing campaigns, that if you customize the ads to be as, of course, as beautiful as possible, your click-through rates on the ad itself is going to be 2 to 5 times of which your typical dynamic remarketing ad is going to be, assuming that you don't have crazy level of customization, okay? In that case, it may be only 1 to 2 times, but a dynamic remarketing ad will only get like a 0.1% click-through rate or something like that, 0.2, 0.3, whereas I can make a custom designed ad where I'll try to, for each item, okay, and run those so that if they're looking at item A, they see now a static ad that I've designed for them, I can get a click-through rate approaching 1%, okay? So, but when you're talking about increasing the click-through rate 2 to 5 times, because you're making a static ad versus an ad that looks like an ad they've seen everywhere else, the dynamic remarketing ads as they show up, just their default, how they show up and what you're stuck with there. Now you could talk about paying between 1 and 5 times less cost per click on top of everything else. So you're going to have so whatever your remarketing makes, you potentially can make 2 to 5 times more just because of the increase in click-through rate your remarketing ads will get by making the ads look super appealing. Then on top of that, you're going to pay less, you're going to get more clicks, more potential pie, and now you're going to pay less for each of those clicks on top of it. So you're talking about a huge increase in profitability for whatever remarketing contributed to your brand. And again, don't think about you look at the conversion stats on your account, and in very few instances where will the number of conversions from people clicking on the ads directly and buying show that they back out on paper the same that the first click ads do. What they really do is, what you'll be able to do if you do no remarketing and then you add remarketing on, a really good remarketing program, you'll see your overall sales go up because they influence how many people who initially got to the site who eventually buy, because it takes some time to work on them. Typically, it's not something that just works with one ad. They got to see it multiple times. And they don't also, again, when they're reading an article, they don't just go buy right away. Some do. Most of them actually don't. But again, I'd say about 10 or 20% of the markets, you can expect the conversion tracking to show good stats on your remarketing campaign because they're clicking through most of the time and buying directly, whereas 80% of the time it doesn't show good stats, but it still works phenomenally well. It just, they don't click on that ad right then and there. It's just a very big concept that most people don't understand when they're doing remarketing, and therefore they don't do it. I like it because nobody else who I'm competing against will do remarketing, and therefore, think about it. One company's hitting you up with testimonials, reviews, a link to an article that has reviewed your company, an independent product test of your product that you're considering over a period of a month while I'm deciding whether I really want to buy this or not. When they go to buy, you're the one that it's been drilled into their head. Because of the familiarity factor, you trust that company now more than anybody else. I'm of course going to buy it at an astronomically higher rate than if I wasn't marketed to like that. Or at least in comparison to the other people out there who I'm directly competing against. So if there is a purchase to be made, I'm going to by default get it because I put that work in advance. So you get the general idea there. You'll have to decide, simply put, you could do the dynamic remarketing. You can try to improve your results with the static ads, making a set of ads like I just told you that I normally do for our campaigns, making 3, 4, 5 different ads with different selling, the different points in which convince a buyer to buy that rotate out over a period of, a month or a few months while they're, in market or during the sales cycle for that user, and just see if it works better for you or doesn't work better. If you're doing static ads, on the flip side, like I said, you can, because the ads don't look as pretty, but Maybe because you can do super good customization on the ad to fill in information that makes the ad look super customized, you'll get better results with that. You get the general idea of what the options are now for you with this. Last thing I want to speak on is about should I use a quote-unquote tool. There's some different tools out there that can dynamically create a static ad. So it can link with the ad platforms of Google and like Facebook to make a dynamic remarketing ad that doesn't look so ugly. More customization to it. It still looks dry. You can't customize as much as you think, unless there's, just because of the limitations of the ad platform. They don't let you totally customize the ads. Therefore, that's why I say the static ads are hard to beat the results with that. And normally I'll go with that if there's 10 items or less. That'll usually beat no matter what I can do with these dynamic ads, if you will. With that said, those tools that can help you make ads, you want to make ads for 10 different products, you want to design it once, and then you want to do things in a hurry, basically. What these tools will let you do is, of course, you can make an ad template, and that ad template will make ads in 15 different sizes for 10 different items, so at 150 ads with in 10 minutes. Drag and drop, all that. It's just like what I mentioned before about the dynamic remarketing ads and that template that Google makes you use being so cookie cutter, and because of that, people are not going to be compelled to click on it. These tools are going to do the same thing. The tools, in order to be able to have something that will work for everybody, it's by nature, not that they're used to seeing it all the time, which with Google it's especially true, which makes it extra not clickable. In this particular case, everything is so square. There's big blocks where the content will go. Whereas if you're going to design an ad, a custom ad, you can change the size of the different content. Maybe you have a really big product image and smaller. You can perfectly dial it in for the space that you have for that particular product. And therefore, you should just understand that you're going to get better click-through rates and therefore better results from a totally static ad. And for that matter, you're not going to, the time you save is not worth all the money you're going to lose, not actually just making the ads. I get why these tools exist. People hate making banner ads. They're tedious. But you might be losing $100,000 a year because you made this tool, used this tool to cut out the, 20, 30 hours it took to make the ads in all those different sizes for all 10 items that you sell. So I won't get into naming any of those tools here, but they exist. And in case you were looking at any, I just wanted to throw that in as a side. That it's a good idea on paper. I'm sure you will look at it. The ads aren't looking the greatest. That not looking the greatest has a big difference on your results, as you could probably imagine without even seeing this video. Anyway, if you like this video, I have a ton of other videos on this channel about other PPC money-making strategies. You should check those out if you are into and trying to do the best PPC you can for your business. I feel like it's the best channel on YouTube about money-making PPC strategies. I have a blog at guaranteeppc.com/blog with step-by-step instructions on how to build campaigns that are guaranteed to work, in which I use directly for our clients. If you like information along those kind of lines, you can find it there. Maybe that'll be more, that'll be enticing to you as well. If you have any questions, anything that you think I should have covered or should be more clear, leave me a comment down below. I get back to every single person that leaves me a comment on this channel within a day or two. With all that said, hope you enjoyed the video. Hope this can give you some ammo to go out there and get a bit more results from your remarketing as it sits.